Welcome to Cutoff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, your co-host today, this evening, if you're listening in the evening.
Or early this morning if you're on your commute to work.
Yes, I am your all-day co-host. Wherever you are, I am there.
I love that you follow me around all the time just to co-host life.
With a microphone in my hand.
Exactly.
Julie might say something interesting.
Right. It looks weird, but people just kind of get into it.
You'd be surprised how little I have recorded.
For all the time you spend with me?
Yes, exactly.
Wow, maybe we should learn to manage our time a little better.
I'm just waiting for a good bon mot or something, you know.
What does that mean?
Don't make me define it.
I want you to define it.
Okay. I'm not. This is going to be like in corrections corner, but I believe it's something that somebody says that's clever and funny.
Bon mot?
I think it's B-O-N-M-O-T. Two separate words. It's French.
Bon mot.
Bon mot. Oh, sorry.
You know my French accent is impeccable.
God. There's a French guy that is a customer at one of the places where I perform, and he's always, trying to correct my French. And I don't speak French, so yeah.
Yeah.
We never really get anywhere.
When I was in Paris just last week, the French in general, they're fine. They're very nice.
Yes.
But there are stories about them being a little condescending to Americans who don't, and it's generally Americans who don't attempt to speak the language.
Don't try, yes.
Yes, exactly. And I get that. However, we were standing in line near Notre Dame there's a very famous gelato cart there that has a line around the block.
Really?
Yes. So we had to stand in line, of course. Because
Notre Dame gelato.
Anyway, so we got up there, and my husband did his best to use whatever French words he had, which was lovely. But the guy then took the time to correct his accent. And it really bugged my husband.
Wow. Well, it's kind of rude to correct someone's accent. It's one thing to try to understand somebody if they're not saying the right word and you don't know, you need to know. But I don't know. We live in a big city, Los Angeles, where a lot of people, English is their second or third language.
Yeah.
And I don't correct anybody. I just try to understand what they're saying.
I am guilty, and many of you know this, of being a bit of a grammar Nazi.
Yes.
Which is not exactly the same.
No, because if you're correcting someone's grammar and their first language is your first language, I think that's almost...
They should have paid attention.
They should have paid
attention.
I cut somebody slack when they're visiting and they don't speak the language. You don't say, "Oh no, the proper use is this."
Yeah, I actually only do it with people that I kind of want to rub the wrong way anyway. Is that too much information?
No. Oh, no.
Okay.
No. Just don't ever correct me.
Too late. Anyway, hey, something really cool happened over the holidays.
Oh, tell me.
I got a message. I got a message from a listener who has been a listener for a while. No, not that long. But she's been a listener, and she's on the Facebook page and what have you. And she sends me a message, and her name is Tanya. And she says, "Julie, I feel so bad. I just was on 23andMe, and I saw a message that you left me like 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I never saw it. And apparently we're related."
Wow. That's wild.
And I immediately went, "Tanya, are you Tanya Boodle?" And she's like, "Yes." And I said, "That is a name that has never gone out of my head. I was obsessed with it, and whoever she was would never get back to me."
Because you never forget a boodle?
I thought it was an interesting name, and it kept coming up in all my matches.
Yeah.
So she is a match to me, a distant match, like a fourth to sixth cousin.
Right.
But we have a mutual match who is another cousin of mine on my Fisher line, who I found out that her father is one of my Fisher family. And she's also a match, so we know that we match somewhere on the Fisher line.
It's funny when you say Fisher line.
Fishing line?
I hear fishing line. And you've probably said this on every podcast, and I've never once made that connection.
Fishing line.
And here I am thinking of fish jokes.
It's good. It's good. You know what else?
What?
You know what else is fun?
What?
My tree, because of my two birth names, is the Fisher-Price tree. That's all I have to say about that.
I loved Fisher-Price toys and Fisher-Price people when I was a kid. Remember those little round people that fit in the little holes?
The little people. Were they called the little...
No, they were Fisher-Price people.
Were they just called people?
Yeah, I had a little bus when I was a kid that I could drag around with a string.
I feel like there was another word for them.
Oh, well, I called them Fisher-Price people.
Meeples? No, that's a board game thing. I got that from my husband. I don't know what that
I
reaction
don't know what a
was.
meeples is, but you know what?
They're peoples.
I think I'd rather go back to poodles or whatever. Wait, no, what was her name?
Tanya Boodle.
Boodle.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi, Tanya.
We're going to figure this out. All right, let's get into DNA talk, shall we?
Let's.
Here's a fun story.
Okay.
So in December, there was a woman named Connie Moultroup, and she met her mother for the first time ever, and she's almost 70 years old.
Okay.
So she was adopted at birth, obviously.
Yes.
She took a DNA test that led to a cousin that led her to her biological mother. The biological mother is Genevieve Purinton, and she's 88 and lives in Tampa, Florida. So she gave birth on May 12th, 1949 in Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana.
I knew you were going to do that.
I know.
Also, home of the Jacksons.
Well, there
Yeah.
you go.
And she was told the baby had died.
Oh, no.
They came in and said the baby died. She was alone in the hospital. Nobody was there with her. Her parents weren't with her. Can you imagine?
How horrific.
I know, it's horrific. So she didn't ask to see death certificates or ask questions because she was 18. She actually says, I was 18. Who thinks about that when they're 18? Why would you doubt? You
And
know.
especially at 40 in 1949 or, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I believe an 18-year-old in 1949,
Would be even more immature than an 18-year-old.
if not immature, just less world-wise,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There was no interwebs then.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, she said, I was told it was a girl, but she died. And she says, I think of my life as before and after, sort of like BC and AD, the woman said, of losing her baby. So,
I bet. I
Yeah.
bet, you know, that's one of those dividing lines in your life,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is, which is what's so surprising to me when people say they can't remember who the father of their child is.
Who shall remain nameless.
Yeah. So Genevieve, the mother, had apparently been having an affair with a man who she discovered was married. And so she ended it. She left high school as soon as her pregnancy became visible, and she received her high school diploma in the mail the same day her daughter was born. She said that she recalled having signed papers at the hospital, but she assumed they were meant to provide a directive in the event that she died or could no longer care for her daughter. I have no idea what I signed,
Oh, my gosh.
she said. Yeah. So after giving birth, she severed ties with her parents. I wonder why. And moved to Florida in 1950. I would think that would be because they weren't there when she had a child.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Ugh. I apparently she never saw them again. There she became a chef and helped raise one of her sister's children. A hysterectomy prevented her from having any more of her own.
Oh, that's so sad.
I know. So before being reunited with her daughter, she thought she was the last surviving member of her immediate family. Her parents and all 8 of her siblings had died, and she didn't have any children, obviously. So the adoption documents that Ms. Moultroup, the daughter, retrieved from the Adoptions and Abandonment Unit at the Edelman Children's Court in Los Angeles County showed that a doctor at the hospital had arranged for the adoption.
Without her knowledge or consent?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Within the paperwork, she found her mother's signature. So that was what she signed. They
Okay.
told her, sign this in case, it's like an advance directive.
But it was actually
adoption papers.
Wow.
Isn't that awful? Her adoptive parents told her that she'd been born to a friend of a friend. But when she was younger, the story was different, saying that they walked up and down the aisles of the hospital until they found her and just had to take her home. Oh, listen to this. As they hugged, Ms. Moultroup recalled her mother looked to her and said, "You're not dead."
Oh, my God. Because when did
heartbreaking.
this happen? When did they find?
December.
Of this year or last year?
Last year, yeah. She's lucky that she's still alive.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts? Yeah. So, and one more thing. In January, she's going to meet her 2 half-sisters, paternal half-sisters, the daughters of her biological father, because he had other children.
Did that father ever know that she was pregnant?
I have no idea. I didn't get into that.
Right,
but she's
right.
excited to meet them because she's never had siblings.
I can't even
I
imagine the mother's what's going through her head.
Yeah.
Whether she beats herself up for signing something without reading it, or believing them when they said the child was dead, or without any kind of proof.
It's just shocking.
So, do you think that the mother's mother and father, who disapproved of this of her being pregnant, arranged for this? Because why would the doctor do
but
that?
why would they even not go to the hospital? Unless maybe they were at the hospital, but she didn't know. And maybe they were behind that. Maybe they themselves got in touch with the doctor or...
Because why would a doctor do that on their own without talking to the mother first and saying, I think you should give up this child or something, you're not prepared or whatever they used to do.
Well, yeah, they keep in mind that young women who had just had babies were not treated as somebody with a mind of their own at all. They were more often than not forced into giving up their children.
Especially if they were unmarried, right?
Especially.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Young and unmarried.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was very shameful. It's interesting. My husband's father was adopted. And the story was that he found out later in life, and his grandmother's sister wrote him a letter telling him that his parents weren't his parents. I guess she was mad at the mother about something, so she took it upon herself to tell him that.
So she did it out of vindictiveness and not out of, I think you need to know?
That's what it sounds like. We have the letter. But she said it in a way that it sounded like she knew who the parents were. She said, you'd be very proud of who your mother was. So then as the years went by, we decided that the mother, Mary, was definitely not his mother. But we thought that the father was his father, who raised him.
Right.
And something had happened, and she just agreed to raise somebody else's love child.
Right.
Mainly because the father has such a resemblance to my brother's my husband's half brother. He looks very much like him, and they have apparently there's like this chest bone thing that runs in the family that.
How disturbing.
To say the least. Anyway, so we just assumed that. So I have been trying to figure out for years who the mother is, and my husband's done DNA, his sister has done DNA, and I decided I needed to find out, first of all, if I'm looking for both parents or just one. So I found a relative of my husband's father living somewhere in the Midwest and got in touch with him, and he remembered Dee, my father-in-law, who's passed, and his father, and was more than happy to provide a DNA sample so that I could confirm that he is indeed a Morris of this family. Well, the DNA came back, and he's not related.
Oh, my God.
So we are indeed looking for two. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing the things we assume just because we were told, and I mean, why would you question your parents? And, I don't know, you just go...
Yeah, everybody's different. I mean, I think if I hadn't been told I was adopted, I think I would have guessed it.
Yeah.
I think... whereas I had a friend in high school who was also adopted that was the spitting image of her sister.
Right.
So it's a crapshoot.
I know, but it's different when you're adopted. But I mean, I had uncles and aunts growing up, and I never questioned that they weren't. Maybe they aren't my uncles and aunts, or you just whatever.
There's no guarantee anymore.
I know, right? Now I'm gonna have to review my whole life.
Yeah. So that's where we are, and we're also in the situation of. One of the sides of the family, I've talked about this before, is from Dare County, North Carolina, which is a huge, another endogamous community.
Okay.
So my husband and his sister have hundreds of matches with the same name or variations of the same name.
God.
And it's just a lot to go through. Anyway.
It sounds like a job for Julie Dixon Jackson, Jen Genie.
It does, but it has me stumped still.
Right.
And let's go to break. After this break, I have another story about endogamy to tell you.
Okay, great.
All right.
If you're enjoying Cutoff Genes, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
Okay, we're back.
Hello.
Hello.
I want to hear more about endogamy.
Very good.
And as soon as I said that, my dog Buddy, who was sitting with us in the studio,
and dog and me,
his ears just went up. Like, did he say dog and me?
Did he say WALK?
Well, he was staring at a ladybug that has flown in through the door, and he was just staring up at it. But when I said endogamy, he looked over at me like perhaps that means...
Yeah, he heard dog. He knows dog. He knows what he is. Yeah. Dogs are smarter than we give him credit for.
He's our mascot.
Yep. He is.
And our sponsor.
And he yells at me on a daily basis.
Yes.
All right. So speaking of endogamy.
Yes.
So I took a new case.
Okay.
last week. And it's very interesting. And it looked like it should be pretty straightforward. But we have Acadians in the house.
What is that?
Acadians are a population, in this case, Prince Edward Island in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Are Acadians. So when Prince Edward Island was first settled, it was a very remote community, and what happens with endogamy is that over the years, families end up intermarrying, and there's like 5 surnames on the entire island.
Wow. Yeah.
So
And it makes sense on an island too, you know.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's true. They had ferries, but yeah, they were still
Yeah.
pretty isolated. So I noticed pretty quickly how many of the matches were from Prince Edward Island, and I've never had a case other than my husband's case that is so daunting in that I just have so much to work through and so much. And, I have to keep in mind that basically what endogamy means is it's not impossible, but I can count less on the numbers and more on locations to narrow it down.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do that when it's that daunting, when there's, could
Right.
be hundreds of people?
Right. Well, in this case, luckily, the good part is that she was born in Massachusetts, and which is a few hours away from Prince Edward Island. So a lot of this particular family moved in the early 1900s to Massachusetts
Okay.
from Canada. So I have a few lines kind of spread out around Massachusetts. And in fact, her highest match that should be a first cousin once removed to a second cousin, his son, I've been talking to, the father has passed away, but they're from the same town that she was born in.
Oh, all right. Well, that
Yes,
helps.
exactly. So I have, I've got my work cut out for me, but it's certainly not impossible, and it's certainly going to take longer than it normally does. Normally, a case this straightforward would take maybe 2 days, but yeah.
How long do you think it's going to take you? I mean, you have no way of knowing,
Well,
right?
it's taken me at least 72 hours so far.
Well, I maybe I can help here. I am from Massachusetts.
Oh,
so
perfect. Malden, do you know Malden, Massachusetts?
I do know Malden,
Oh, okay.
yes,
So
yes.
yeah, she's from Malden, and a lot of them are from Rhode Island. There's a part of them from Providence.
I was born in Providence and grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh my God, are you an Acadian?
Maybe. I've never heard of Prince Edward Island.
You haven't?
No.
Yeah, I've heard it's beautiful. You know what was said in Prince Edward Island? What was it? There was that children's series that all my friends loved that I never saw because I grew up in Australia, I guess. What was it?
Not Murder, She Wrote.
No. It was a children's series about a girl who went to live with her family at Prince Edward Island. Oh, it was Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, God. I've heard of that.
Yeah, we all have. I never watched it, but apparently, I think it must be because I'm from Australia. But all of my girlfriends my age are obsessed with it to this day.
There is some new show that's on, or a
They
recent
remade it.
show that they remade. I've
Yeah.
seen billboards for it. I've never watched it, but I think it's another version of Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I wasn't really into Heidi when I was a kid, so
Yeah, me
I feel
neither.
like that's my version of Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah, right? I know.
Yeah.
I wasn't into that either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe,
I'm glad we
if it
cleared
was
that
Anne
up.
of Clark Gables, like I loved old movies, so maybe something about Clark Gables I would have.
Ooh, I have a great story about Clark Gable that's DNA related. I'll tell you another time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not it.
Well,
That's,
no, it'll be a corrections corner where you can come and tell us.
yes, probably. All right. So,
Oh, my God. Are you going to spring it on me that I'm actually related to Clark Gable?
yes, he's your daddy. Indeed.
All I got were the crazy ears that he had, right? That's it. None of the good looks, just the ears.
I heard he had really bad breath.
Really?
Yes.
Did I get that too?
No.
No, thank God. All right.
No,
just the ears.
you did not.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Frankly, Julie, I don't give a damn.
All right. Here's a listener question that I'm just going to get to.
Okay.
Okay. So somebody said, I tested twice with FTDNA. I don't know why. Why would you do that? And my results were slightly different. How can that be? So I went straight to the source, Blaine Bettinger, the brilliant Blaine Bettinger. And he said, yes, several people have tested twice at the same company for various reasons. I wish he would have said what reasons. One concern is whether they test on the same chip or different chip versions, because almost every DNA company uses a new chip. I don't even know what that means. But
yeah, chocolate chip. What? I don't know. All right.
It's a computer chip
Potato
or
chip?
something,
All
right? So, he said he's tested twice at 23andMe, but on 2 different chips, and of course he has some different results. I think what they're referring to is the ethnicity is slightly different.
Oh, yeah.
Because the chip looks at different things. The different chips, when they're updated, they have a different. What do you call it?
Algorithm.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah. So it varies from chip to chip. I think your matches shouldn't change. I would think maybe some of your more distant matches because it maybe edits out a little differently. But all your close matches should be the same. If not, there's something wrong.
I did one of those super cheap DNA tests, like at some fly-by-night company, and they just my results came back and said I was just a chip off the old block.
And a poodle.
And a poodle. And a poodle, exactly. No, folks, that was a bad joke. I have not tested my
Rich
DNA
is
yet.
back, everybody.
Yeah. He's in rare form.
He is. Okay, so that was the
Medium
listener
rare.
question. I
All
think.
right.
Please make it end. Okay, let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to Cutoff Genes, the new podcast starring Julie Dixon-Jackson.
Okay, guys, we're back. Story time.
Oh, good. Oh, it's part 2.
It's part 2 of
good.
Janine Cate.
Well, I've been waiting a whole week.
I know you have, with bated breath. So when last we left off,
Again with the
Janine's-
breath.
I know.
Clark Gable.
I know.
What?
It's a theme.
So yes, when last we left off.
Janine had told us that she'd found a distant or a relatively close cousin, not a distant cousin, and she and another relative had come to the conclusion that they believed she might be Caroline, who had not been seen or heard from since she was 17 years old in the 40s.
Wow.
And so now, without further ado, here is the conclusion of the story.
While I'm waiting for a response, Edwina and I are still messaging back and forth.
Sure.
And she sends me another tidbit. She says, hey, I recently spoke to another cousin who said that that Caroline had disappeared in 1943 after she came home late from curfew and got locked out of the house and was never heard from again. And so I'm like, wait a second, this sounds like she ran away from home.
Wait, so she was, what, in 1943? She was, what, 17?
17 and a half.
Okay. And the story is that she missed curfew, so she got locked out of the house and was never seen again.
Never heard from again.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, wow. So I am massively excited.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the first thing I want to do is tell my sister. So I try to call her, and she's not home.
Oh, dear.
And this is like, I'm so frustrated. Who am I going to tell? I'm so excited. So I actually call my cousin Janice on the phone. They say, Janice, let me tell you what happened. She's also a descendant of that line, and that gave me some chance to be excited about it. And I thought, let me get more information. So I went and did a Google search on the name the person used for the DNA test and found an obituary for who I thought was her husband. Said that she'd been married 61 years, had 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and at that time I can't even remember how many great-grandchildren. I then took that name and did a search on Ancestry and found their marriage record in, of all places, Detroit, Michigan,
Oh, wow.
in 1944. So I'm thinking I'm onto something.
Right.
I didn't have too long to wait. That evening, I got a text message, an email, and a message on 23andMe from Jerry. Jerry is Caroline's son.
Okay.
And he said that on Christmas Day, because of all the messages they got on 23andMe, his mother told him her name for the first time.
Okay. So he knew his mother by a different name.
He knew his mother by a different name.
And that was the name on the marriage certificate that you had found.
That was the name on the marriage certificate, yes.
But
And
she's
it was
really...
not the name it was not Caroline Yerke.
Sure. But she is really Caroline Yerke, and that's the
She is
first
really
time
Caroline
he found
Yerke.
out. Oh, my gosh.
Now, I was a little disappointed to find out I was not the first one to discover this.
Oh.
There were other DNA match cousins who put it together the same way I did and were messaging him.
Right.
He had convinced his mother somehow to do a DNA test. At this time, she's 92. She's living in an assisted living facility, elderly, frail. And because he, quote, knew nothing about her family, he somehow convinced her to do a DNA test.
Good for
him. And she
him.
really never imagined it would lead to what it did.
Right. Yes.
And then, of course, the emails were flying back and forth because Jerry is, of course, blown away by what has happened. He just never expected this. And we're all massively excited, and all these cousins and all these emails are flying. And, of course, it's flying through the family tree at the speed of light.
Yeah.
And so it's just massively excited. So I get back from the wedding on Saturday evening, and Sunday morning, and I'm in the car driving to go meet Caroline. Luckily, she only lived 2.5 hours away from me. I reach out to one of my cousins who, by the way, lives 4 miles from Jerry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they have lived in the same town for years. And before they lived in that town, they lived in another same town for years. And they get there. And so when we all get together, I meet my cousin and his wife, Jerry and his wife, and myself and my 2 daughters. And my cousin Skip and Jerry are looking at each other like, man, you guys look familiar. But they can't place how they know each other, except maybe they both shop at the same Costco.
Right.
But it was just kind of, wow, this is a small world.
Oh, sure is. Yeah. Right.
So we meet at Jerry's house, and Jerry had gone to pick up Caroline and bring her in to meet us. Mm-hmm. When Caroline sees us, she begins to cry.
Oh, my gosh.
And she said, I just never thought anyone cared that I was gone.
Oh. Wow.
And it was just kind of this very sweet moment. And we each kind of visit with her. I mean, she's very frail. Her long-term memory is not great. We were able to piece together that she got a job as a waitress. She met her husband. He was the cook at the same restaurant. And she disappeared in December of 43 and got married December of 44, and then left to live with his family in Oregon and started her own family.
Now, did you ask her directly what had happened?
And she said she doesn't recall.
She doesn't recall.
She just didn't remember. Now, I did get some details from Jerry's wife because they have been the primary caretaker for his mother for some time. And over the years, they had heard stories that there was some conflict with the stepmother.
Okay.
And the other detail is her own mother had died when she was only 5 years old.
Okay.
And just recently, like 15 minutes before you called me today, going through the documents, I was able to confirm that none of her brothers and sisters were living at home at the time she disappeared.
So she was the last kid at home?
She was the last kid.
Okay. Okay.
When it happened, no, actually she did have a younger brother, but he was off doing something.
Okay.
He wasn't living at home because he talked about the letters he got from her.
Oh.
And so he was off, I think, in the military, which meant that he was 16, but I don't know how that worked. But all I know is he later mentioned that he was getting letters from her, and then the letters stopped.
Okay.
And so whatever it was, there was a disconnect there that went on. And
right.
The other comment that she made is that she said she was just a mixed-up kid.
Okay.
And if you think about what 17-year-old girls are like,
yeah,
it's not that difficult to see how this could happen. And also, it was 1943. It's the Great Depression. They're struggling to feed themselves.
Yeah.
And the family is very poor and struggling and disconnected.
Yeah.
I don't even know how much contact she had with her siblings. Most of them, they were out of the house and married.
Right.
And her closest sister in age was 11 years older than her.
Right. So she probably felt very much like an only child anyway.
Yeah, very isolated. Now, there was a stepsister in the house. I was able to determine that, and whoever it was, she didn't like him.
Okay.
So there was a stepmother, a stepsister that she felt disconnected from.
Right.
And a father who was busy trying to keep the family from starving.
Yeah,
so
it sounds like there may have been something where the stepmother encouraged something, perhaps.
Well, it is interesting, another little tidbit. Less than a year after she disappeared, her father divorced her stepmother.
Oh, okay.
And so they were no longer together.
All right. I wonder
and
if
then
she
the
knew
plot
that.
thickens after that.
Oh.
a year following that, so let me get the dates right because I want to be exact on this. It took me a while to figure this one out. Let me get to her brother, David. So in December of 1945, so 2 years after she disappeared, David disappears.
Her brother?
He is a commercial fisherman working in Florida. He goes out in his boat alone and is never heard from again, at least for some time. And his boat, a week later, is found drifting, and he is presumed drowned. And he left behind a wife and a baby, daughter. 6 years later, 2 days before Thanksgiving, he shows back up. He calls his older brother, Herman, asks for some money to be sent to New Orleans, where he's been working in a convalescent home. And he comes back to his family and is welcomed as the returning son and husband and father, and he claims to have amnesia. This went really well for a while, for actually all of 2 days before his wife in New Orleans, who had reported him missing, says, "Hey, I recognize that guy in the newspaper. That's my missing husband." And there's quite a few newspaper articles I was able to find detailing that disappearance reunion, and for the couple of days, it's in newspapers all over the United States.
Yeah.
About David Yerke's miraculous return with amnesia. And then at which point the story turns a little south. Now, later documents show that the so-called second wife in New Orleans cannot provide a marriage certificate. So it looks like he was not a bigamist, but eventually his first wife divorced him.
Right.
Surprise, surprise. But in his disappearance, I was able to find an article talking about his disappearance that talked about Caroline's disappearance.
Oh, okay.
And so that was kind of exciting. And in it, the youngest brother, Daniel, said, and I'll just read what it says.
Okay.
Daniel said that his youngest sister, Caroline, disappeared from the Yerke home in Michigan in 1944 and hasn't been heard from since. There are 5 brothers and 3 sisters in the family. It was during this time that I was with the infantry in Pacific, Yerke related. Caroline was writing to me, and all of a sudden, I didn't hear from her. The girl was 17 at the time, a high school student, and an odd job employee during her spare time. She was tall, brunette, and very pretty, Yerke said. She failed to report to work at one of her jobs, Yerke said. So it sounds like her work reported her missing, not her family.
Right.
Though I can't assume that necessarily. And then possibility that Douglas Yerke, her husband, and then it goes on to talk about her brother's disappearance.
The other one
so that
disappeared.
Is all that was mentioned. But I was pretty excited when I found that. I was like, woo.
That's cool. Yeah. So
cool.
It's like if he hadn't been found or hadn't shown up again, that would make this all the more creepy.
Yes.
Just because like the disappearing
creepy.
Family unless maybe she did have some kind of amnesia. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, it's hard to
maybe she doesn't
reconstruct when it's literally 75 years after the fact.
Exactly.
And I also wonder, did she see the newspaper articles about her brother's reappearance?
Right.
Because it was apparently all over the news, but it's also a big country. So maybe where she was living in Oregon, maybe
she was in Oregon.
His reunion, showing back up in Detroit, Michigan, didn't make it all the way to Oregon.
Right. Yeah, that's entirely possible. And maybe she just didn't read the papers. I don't know.
Yeah,
it could be.
There's so many things.
So many.
She did go on and seemed to have a pretty good life. She was married 61 years. And
to the same man?
To the same man. I looked at the family pictures, and they looked pretty happy and seemed like she had a good life.
Wow. And how many kids does she have?
3.
Okay.
And I don't know how many great-grandchildren because, they keep coming. It's been kind of exciting.
What a Christmas.
Yes. It has been different. And it's also like tomorrow I'm actually driving back up, and her great-niece, Kristen, is driving down.
Oh, great.
Meet her.
Oh, so good.
And in fact, I think Kristen is the granddaughter of, I'm not sure it's the granddaughter of the brother that disappeared or a different one. I'm not sure about that. Because as I said, it's a large family, and I don't remember exactly which line she came after.
Okay.
But it's, as I said, it's kind of fun. We get all these new relatives to get to know, and I think it's been good for Caroline. I think it's been very peaceful for her, and I think a sense of, I don't know, feeling more appreciated than she thought.
Well,
she just really thought that nobody cared that she was gone.
That's the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, I'm wondering, because this is all very new. So I've got a feeling, let's cross our fingers, that a little more might come to the surface in the next few weeks or months.
Well, and definitely that is a possibility as she talks about things. Because when we have the discussions at the house, sometimes you'd ask her a question. Like, for example, I ask her, how did you meet your husband? And she goes, I don't recall. And then her son popped up with, they met at the restaurant. He was a cook, she was a waitress, kind of things. And then later she threw in another tidbit about something. So I think there might be more lurking there.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to see.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. Well, that's remarkable.
Yeah.
What a great story.
Remarkable. It's the most exciting thing I've ever discovered, and I don't think I'm ever going to top it.
Yeah, well, you might be surprised, but the more we do this, don't you just find that, first of all, everybody has crazy stories in their family. I don't think there's a single family that doesn't, there's no such thing as a normal, everyday family, I don't think, even those that are trying to make it look like they are.
Yes.
And I think DNA testing is helping us all become aware of that.
Very, very true. And there was one interesting comment that I got from the story that I posted on I posted on DNA Detective. Mm-hmm. I got a reach out from someone asking if they could share the story from an organization that's a support group for families of basically missing children or missing other family members.
Oh.
As kind of a sign of hope, like no matter how long they're gone, keep looking. And I thought, that really is kind of sweet. That hopefully that does bring someone some comfort.
Absolutely, and it
waiting.
may also. I mean, this is growing exponentially. So I think that's probably actually going to happen a lot more. You're probably not the only one that has found a long lost relative that people literally haven't heard of for years.
And if it weren't for DNA, I don't know if we would have put it together because Jerry is my second cousin, and if he had done his DNA and said my mother's name and used the name that she'd used, we would have had a hard time figuring out where she fit in the family tree.
Absolutely.
Because I believe in 2 generations they had 78 descendants.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so that's just a lot of lines to try to figure out. Now, he did have the clue of his mom's birthday being just 1 month different from Caroline's, but it would have been a whole lot harder to put together with his DNA versus hers.
Now, did Caroline celebrate her birthday as July or June?
I believe June.
And was that when her actual birthday was? Well, was one thing wrong, or had she changed it?
Because it's 75 years later, I don't know who's wrong.
Okay, interesting. I'm wondering if she consciously did it.
And I haven't found a birth certificate. Part of this is getting back in that era where a lot of babies were born at home.
Yeah.
Documentation is a little sketchier to come by. So
that is true.
I really don't know if she purposely changed it or it just happened to, over the years, she got it wrong.
Interesting.
I do know that she did fudge her birth date on her wedding license because she claimed to be 20 when she got married and she was really 18.
Okay. That happened
there was
a lot,
no need
though.
for the month change. So I think that was just maybe an error because June, July, they're very similar.
And they could have looked right. Somebody's handwriting could just look like it says that date. Okay. Well, Janine, thank you so much for taking my call and for sharing this extraordinary story with everybody. Keep in touch with us and let us know of any updates or any new developments because I've got a feeling there might be.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. And I will talk to you soon. All right. So what do we think?
It was like a Hardy Boys mystery novel.
I know.
Or maybe Nancy Drew or Agatha Christie or somebody. But
Murder, She Wrote.
Murder, She Wrote, exactly. If it only had taken place on Prince Edward Island.
Murder, She Wrote didn't take place in Prince Edward.
No, but it was Anne of Green Gables. I'm just doing a
Janine,
callback.
I'm sorry we messed up your outro. It was a fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing, Janine.
Yeah, I loved it, and thank you so much, really, for going ahead and telling something so personal.
Yes, absolutely. And I think because it's so new, I really think there's more to the story. And I hope Janine stays in touch with us because I have to know.
Yeah, then we can.
I do not want to. I have to.
Then we can have updates later, right?
We love updates.
Yes.
All right. Hey, Rich.
Yes.
Tell people about yourself.
I'm Richard Castle. I am a songwriter and musician, and I have a website, richardcastle.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at Castle Songs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. I'm at Jules Jackson with 2 O's on Twitter. The podcast is at Cutoff Jeans Podcast on Twitter. There's a Facebook page, Cutoff Jeans Podcast. Ask to join. I'll probably let you in. You can send me a direct email at julesjackson@cutoffjeans.com. Please keep reaching out. Please keep talking to me. Please keep telling me your crazy stories. I love, love, love them. And also keep asking questions because we love that too.
Yes, because we're all about truth, aren't we?
You know we are.
Yeah. Where is my truth? I can't seem to find it. Where is my truth?
The truth is in your jeans.
Oh, that's it.